Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall, and I'm delighted to have been invited by Tusk to kick off proceedings at this time-critical event, aptly entitled Time for Change. We're honoured to be joined here at the View from the Shard in London by the Duke of Cambridge, Royal Patron of Tusk, along with the Secretary of State for the Environment, Andrea Leadsom, former Foreign Secretary Lord Haig, and many others. We're also joined live via satellite by distinguished guests of ISPS Handa at the Park Hyatt Hotel in Tokyo and the Santon Convention Centre in Johannesburg on the eve of the 17th Convention on the International Trade in Endangered Species. This is a satellite event, so there may be a slight delay as we go between locations. The illegal wildlife trade is a $20 billion industry, exceeded only by the illegal trades in drugs, weapons, and people. The money stimulates violence, corruption, and a dangerous international network of criminals. Two of the world's most iconic species are at the center of this nightmare. With an average of 82 elephants and 4 rhino poached every day, there is now a real possibility that these animals could become extinct in the wild. I've spent 6 months on a filmed quest to find out what the solutions might be. And complex as the problem is, it boils down to a simple choice, a choice facing the CITES delegates right now. We must now decide whether to keep open the possibility of legal trade in the products of rhinos and elephants, or to do all that we can to eradicate demand and end the trade once and for all. Well, I've made my choice. I have taken sides in this debate. And I've put together a short film that I hope explains what I think is the only viable solution. We have to end this trade for good. Every day, on average, around 4 rhinos are shot dead by poachers. This poor creature's just one of them. He's just sent us a picture of $1 million worth of rhino horse. I've travelled to 10 countries to try and understand what's happening to Africa's most iconic species. 80 times a day, an elephant's being shot down, hacked apart, taken away and traded. One thing is clear, the global appetite for wildlife products is driving this trade. £1,900 for 100 grams. Some say trade is unavoidable, and the only way left to save these species is to legalise that trade and put the cash back into conservation. But what I've seen suggests that legal trade stimulates the market and provides cover for poached ivory. Oh my God, that's a lot of ivory. For me, the real question is, can the world change its appetites? To find out, I went to China and Hong Kong, the world's biggest ivory consumers.
Hello.
Hi, Yami. How are you?
To
see if attitudes are changing.
When we realize this is taken from the live animal, then we are not going to buy it.
There's real momentum gathering with world leaders too. The presidents of both America and China have committed to banning their domestic trades. I'm convinced that China is changing, that other countries can change. So why legalize trade now? Ban the trade for good. Thank you. I'd now like to hand over to the Secretary General of CITES, John Scanlon in Johannesburg. John Scanlon in Johannesburg.
Thanks, Hugh, Your Royal Highness in London, Dr. Handa in Tokyo, Your Excellencies and friends of wildlife from right across the globe. Welcome to the Santon Convention Centre in Johannesburg. My sincere thanks, Your Royal Highness, for your ongoing global leadership in the fight against illegal wildlife trade, as well as to Dr. Handa and to Tusk for inviting us to join this truly unique event linking the United Kingdom and Japan, which quite fortuitously coincides with the start of the World Wildlife Conference, or COP17. the world will turn its attention to what happens right here in South Africa over the course of the next 2 weeks, as representatives of over 180 governments, with the active involvement of observers from across every region, debate and take critical decisions on issues affecting the future of some of the planet's most precious species of wild animals and plants. Over the next fortnight, COP17 will consider changes to the trade controls of close to 500 species of wild animals and plants, including elephant, lion, pangolin, rhino, rosewood, silky and thresher sharks, as well as devil rays. COP17 will deliberate over new and improved measures to combat the scourge of illegal wildlife trade, which today is occurring on an industrial scale driven by transnational organised criminal groups. And it will also review measures to ensure the sustainability of legal trade. Decisions taken under CITES have a direct, real-world impact. And while all 182 CITES parties are deeply committed to the survival of wild animals and plants, they sometimes have differing views on the best way to achieve this agreed objective. As such, the discussions can at times be robust and intense, which is a reflection of the high stakes under CITES, recently described as an agreement of remarkable scope and power, and of the level of interest and passion that governments and people have for wildlife. One is never left wondering under CITES. It is an honest, pragmatic, and action-oriented convention under which matters are debated in open session and go to a vote where there is no consensus. And if you are not able to join us here in Johannesburg, the entire meeting will be webcast. We are deeply grateful to our generous host country, South Africa, for the impeccable arrangements put into place for COP17 and for making this room available to us today. And we again express our most sincere thanks to Your Royal Highness, to Dr. Handa and Tusk for inviting us to join this perfectly timed event. The stage is now set for what is sure to be a remarkable 2 weeks. And it is now my pleasure to hand over to Tokyo and to Dr. Handa, the founder of ISPS Handa and generous sponsor of today's event.
Thank you very much. Your Royal Highness, distinguished guests, good evening from Tokyo. I am delighted that ISPS Handa is sponsoring this important global event through our new partnership with Tusk. I am not an expert in wildlife conservation. Like many people, I was unaware of the terrible impact that the illegal wildlife trade is having on our natural world. Japan has traded legally in ivory products for centuries. This is the same for many other countries. But the harsh reality is that today, this trade is now providing a cover for ivory smuggling. These products are sold to consumers who do not understand the dire consequences of their actions. The survival of the world's most iconic species, such as the elephant, tiger, and rhino, are now under threat. As soon as I learned of this reality, I immediately agreed to support Tusk's work. We must stop the killing of these animals. Japan must not turn its back on this issue. Like all countries, we have a moral responsibility to play our part in preserving the world's wildlife. I do not wish to be part of the generation who knew what was happening and yet did nothing. We cannot let these wonderful creatures disappear from our planet. That will be a terrible crime. As patron of task, His Royal Highness Prince William has led the way, shining a spotlight on this issue to a global audience. He has done this with the support of international leaders. I congratulate and thank him for what he has done. It is now a great honor for me to invite His Royal Highness to address our audiences around the world. Polo Polo. Please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted we are joined by those of you in Tokyo and Johannesburg as we prepare for a pivotal moment in the fight against illegal wildlife trade. I'm particularly grateful to Tusk for providing this unique platform, and to ISPS Handa Foundation and Tusk other sponsors for making such an ambitious occasion possible. To John Scanlon and Dr. Handa, thank you for sharing your thoughts on an issue I particularly feel passionate about. Today's event, on the eve of the CITES conference in Johannesburg, is timely, and its global nature reflects the global scale of this challenge. Earlier this month, the Great Elephant Census was published, and it confirmed what many of us have feared for some time. One of our planet's most treasured species is on course for extinction at the hands of poachers and traffickers. When I was born, there were 1 million elephants roaming Africa. By the time my daughter Charlotte was born last year, the numbers of savanna elephants had crashed to just 350,000. And at the current pace of illegal poaching, when Charlotte turns 25, the African elephant will be gone from the wild. And the risk is not just to elephants. Today is World Rhino Day, a species that, due to demand for its horn, is being killed at a rate of nearly 3 animals a day. Rhinos face extinction in our lifetimes as we struggle to correct lies about the supposed benefits of using its horn as a drug. However, this crisis is not just about animals. This crisis is also about people. It is some of the world's poorest people who will suffer when their natural resources are stripped from them illegally and brutally. It is families in the world's most vulnerable regions who suffer when 2 rangers are killed every week on the front line of this fight. It is fragile democratic systems in many nations that are at risk from the scourge of violence and corruption that the illegal wildlife trade fuels. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not prepared to be part of a generation that lets these iconic species disappear from the wild. I'm not prepared to explain to our children why we lost this battle when we had the tools to win it. And I know that none of you in Tokyo or Johannesburg or here in London want this either. I fear we will not know what we have lost until it has gone. But there is hope. We can do something. There is huge momentum building from governments, businesses, conservationists, and the public to take the steps required to stop the killing. 3.5 years ago, I spoke on the eve of the last CITES conference, and I urged parties to redouble their efforts to tackle illegal wildlife trade. As we stand on the eve of another CITES gathering, there is much to celebrate. The London conference in 2014, which showed that governments were taking this seriously. The Elephant Protection Initiative, now with 14 member countries. China and America's leadership when last year they were the first to announce domestic bans on ivory trade. The recovery in giant panda numbers in China, one example of how concerted action can deliver results. The transportation industry, led by Lord Hague, acting with resolve through the Buckingham Palace Declaration to tackle their role in this issue. And last week, the overwhelming vote at the IUCN, World Conservation Congress, calling on all countries to close their domestic ivory markets. These are all significant steps, but progress is fragile and we cannot be complacent. As leaders gather for CITES and later at the third Illegal Wildlife Trade Conference in Vietnam in November, which I will be attending, we have the chance to seize a huge opportunity. We have the opportunity to end, once and for all, the mixed messages we have sent for too long about the value and desirability of wildlife products. We have the chance to say that ivory is a symbol of destruction, not of luxury, and not something that anyone needs to buy or sell. We have the chance to say that rhino horn does not cure anything and does not need a legal market. Now is the chance to send an unambiguous message to the world that it is no longer acceptable to buy and sell ivory, rhino horn, or other illegal wildlife products. Indeed, I would challenge anyone who knows the truth of how these wildlife products are obtained to justify desiring them. Materialistic greed cannot be allowed to win against our moral duty to protect threatened species and vulnerable communities. This is not just an issue for people on the other side of the world. The British government announced yesterday that it is looking closely at this issue in respect of our own domestic trade. Wherever we are in the world, we must all play our part. The opportunity that the CITES conference presents to halt the illegal wildlife trade will not come around again for another 3 years. I sincerely hope that the parties are able to unite around an unmistakable message to the world about the crisis in which we find ourselves. In my personal opinion, a tightening and not a loosening of the rules around the international trade in ivory and rhino horn. Mixed messages about the viability of trade in elephant or rhino parts would surely serve only to confuse would-be consumers at this crucial time. We cannot undo the mistakes of the past, but we can and must take moral responsibility for the decisions we make today. Please, let us not lose momentum or focus. If we are to succeed, we must do more. We must do it faster, and we must do it better. But most importantly, we must do it together. Thank you.
Your Royal Highness, on behalf of Tusk, and indeed everyone in the conservation sector, thank you, as ever, for your unswerving commitment to tackling the illegal wildlife trade. Today, you've underlined the urgency with which the global community must act together to halt this devastating market. Now is the time for change. And before we lose our satellite link, I must also thank John Scanlon for his participation on the eve of this crucial CITES conference. There have been many moving parts to this event, and for that we are extremely grateful to our co-sponsors, Land Rover, Avios, Port Roger, the production teams, and all our other partners in all 3 cities. But my final thanks go to Dr. Handa in Tokyo. Your generous support of your foundation has made this ambitious event a reality, and for that we are immensely grateful. So now I say goodbye from Tusk to all our audiences across the world. Thank you very much.